Now, Afrobarometer, they are a Pan-African survey network, and they are the forefront of capturing data on Africa, on the value of Africans, their evaluations, experiences, and all of that. They are 25 years. Can you imagine? 25 years. So we've been joined by their communications coordinator for Anglophone West and North Africa, Mamieku Amoachum, and acting director of comms at Afrobarometer, Josephine Apia-Nyamiche Sani, to tell us more about how they are celebrating 25 years, what Afrobarometer is all about, and what we should expect from them going forward. Let me welcome my very good friends, Mamieku and Josephine. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Nathan. We're well, and how are you?
I'm all right. Thank you so much for joining us. And congrats on turning 25.
Yay.
Let's talk a bit about Afrobarometer, how it started, and the evolution you've undergone in the last few years.
Right. So Afrobarometer, like you just said, is a Pan-African non-partisan survey research network that conducts public opinion surveys on democracy, governance, economy, and the society at large. Again, I think we can confidently say that we are the world's leading source of high quality data and analysis on what Africans are thinking. And back in the early 1990s, virtually nothing was known about what Africans wanted. We had, or what they were thinking. We had the so-called experts and the intellectual elites telling us, opinion leaders telling us what they thought Africans were thinking and all that. And if you meet any of our founders, they'll tell you this interesting story of how they met at a conference about Africa. Okay. And everything that was being discussed was speculative. And so that's actually what led to the birth of Afrobarometer, which essentially is to conduct high quality survey data and, widely disseminate, the aspirations and the attitudes of Africans. So we started in 1999, like you rightly said, we are 25 years in 12 African countries. And since then, we've expanded our footprint to 42 African countries.
From 12 to 42, that's huge, huge. Let's talk about some of the key milestones and achievements that Afrobarometer has accomplished in the last 25 years.
So for me, I think, and riding on what Mami just said, I think the first one for me would be the fact that as an African-led institution, we've been able to decolonize the whole study about Africa. Yeah. Like she said, it used to be some experts who would sit in a corner and decide that this is what Africans want, and they were speaking for us. But we have now provided a platform for ordinary Africans to speak for themselves, and that's first and foremost is the key milestone for me. It's also the fact that we've been able to prove that such research can actually be done in Africa. Our founders used to say that when they started, asking for funds to start the surveys, people actually thought that doing such high quality surveys in Africa was unthinkable. Okay. I mean, Kenyans are saying this. I'm sure that's the same thing that Ghanaians are saying, or isn't that the same thing that Ugandans are saying? But we've been able to show that, there are differences and there are also some similarities. And it takes me to my next point about the African coverage that we have. Okay. We're now in 42 African countries, which represents the voices of 3/4 of the entire continent, And because we ask similar questions in these countries, we are actually able to compare what Ghanaians think to what Kenyans and Ugandans think. And so we are so able to share the similarities and differences in our expectations and our evaluations. The third one would be the fact that we're the gold standard when it comes to surveying research in Africa. We have very rigorous methodologies, and we really do not compromise on our standards. And this is also something that we're trying to instill in the next generation of African researchers. And so capacity building is one of our strongest pillars, and we try to, train upcoming researchers and institutions with several capacity building initiatives, including our summer schools, our basic analysis training, etc. I wouldn't bore you. There's so much I could go on and on and on, but the last one will be the fact that we have time series from 1999 to now, 25 years. Okay. And you can track the changes in attitudes over time. And the wealth of data, which is available on our website free of charge, is a public good.
I see. Let's talk about the flagship report on democracy. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
So to mark our 25th anniversary, we decided to come up with a flagship report. We do a lot of press releases and other reports, but this time we wanted to do one flagship report that people will be looking forward to every year in October during our anniversaries. So we came up with the Africa Insights, and it's going to be based on high priority topics like democracy and governance, economic issues, maybe migration, depending on what's trending that year. But for this year, we decided to focus on our flagship theme, which is on democracy and governance. And so the report shows us Africans' attitudes on democracy. We look at people's support for democracy and democratic norms, and also their satisfaction with the way democracy works in their countries. We're also looking at the factors that drive people's attitudes towards democracy, whether the support. So, for instance, do economic failures in the country make people support democracy less or more, or does it even have an effect at all? Now, in the report, we also have what we call the democracy country scorecards. And we've done this for each of the 39 African countries that we're looking at. And so for each country, it gives you just an at-a-glance view of key findings, some of the key findings that we've talked about.
I see. Just finally, you put out all this wonderful data. It's meant to influence policy and bring about change. So how do you envision policymakers and other key stakeholders using this to help them make proper policies or make proper decisions for us and on the continent as a whole?
So our data gives a clear picture of what people expect, what their experiences are, and their evaluations. And so for policymakers, if they pay attention to this, then they can just effectively align their policies and strategies so that they can, it promotes evidence-based policy making. Our mantra is to let the people have a say. And it's to let the people have a say in policy making. That's the reason why we collect this data and make it available for the policymakers. It also is sort of, sometimes for some countries, it presents some sort of early warning signals. And so if you see that people's satisfaction with democracy is declining, people's views that corruption is increasing, some concerns and dissatisfaction signs, if you pay attention to them, then you'll be able to mitigate some of these things before they blow up into some unrest or other issues. Now for CSOs, advocates, the media, it's a good tool that you can use to hold policymakers accountable and also to enforce transparency and governance.
Wonderful. Happy birthday, happy 25th birthday to Afrobarometer. You're doing some great work. And thank you for joining us. I've been speaking with Communications Coordinator for Anglophone West and North Africa, Mamieku Amwachum, and Acting Director of Communications at Afrobarometer, Josephine Apia Nyamiche Sani. Thank you so much for coming in, and congrats once again on being 25. And that's how we end this morning's edition.